Welcome to BICOM's weekly podcast. This is episode 65 of the BICOM podcast, and I'm joined by my two favourite guests and the mainstay of this podcast, Richard Pater and Calev Ben-Dor. Good morning.
I thought you were going to say esteemed guests.
Sorry, esteemed guests. And I should also say, and for our listeners to know, that this is actually Calev's last week as Director of Research at BICOM. He will be staying on as a, what's your title, Calev, going to be? Sorry.
Senior Research Associate.
So sorry, Calev will be staying on as a Senior Research Associate, but he will no longer be Head of Research and potentially not be joining the podcast as many times. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Calev for all the analysis he's provided with his podcast after the last 65 episodes, and thank you for that. And so I suppose it's probably useful for me to frame the first question of this podcast to you, Calev, so you can leave us with your pearls of wisdom. I mean, the purpose of today's discussion was we wanted to talk about where we are with Israeli elections, which is that a lot of things have changed in terms of the party leaders, the names of some of the parties. We have less parties now competing in the election. But in the overall picture, nothing has changed. And BICOM's poll of polls that we publish in our elections update every 2 weeks shows again consistently that those who don't want Benjamin Netanyahu to be Prime Minister total about 54 seats in the polls, and those who do want Bibi Netanyahu to be Prime Minister is about 56. And our listeners who've been following this closely know that you need 61 seats to get to a majority. Yisrael Beitenu leader Avigdor Lieberman says he wants a national unity government. And Bibi Netanyahu said in an op-ed in Israel Hayom that he will not join a national unity government. He wants to form a government of the right. So I'm going to ask you, Calev, what is going on and what do you think is going to happen?
Well, what is going on is easier to talk about what is going to happen, firstly. I think a few years ago, the electoral threshold was raised to 3.25%.
So that's the amount of votes you need to get into the Knesset. That's what you need to get through.
It's approximately 140,000 votes.
Yeah.
And what happened in April was a very large number of votes. Very large number of people voted for parties that didn't make it. Probably almost 300,000 votes kind of went in the bin, in inverted commas. And as a result of that, what we've seen now is parties merging together to make sure that they will definitely pass the threshold. So we saw that more on the left, where Meretz and Ehud Barak's party and Stav Shafir joined together for the Democratic Union. We saw it on the right, where the New Right and the union of right-wing parties, or the alliance of right-wing parties, all joined back together. But as you said, when you look at the balance between the blocs, nothing has really changed. You've still got the right-wing bloc without Lieberman in kind of high 50s, but no one's giving them 61. And you've got the left-wing bloc, or the anti-Bibi bloc, on the kind of mid-50s. So, as you said, on the ground, a lot has changed. There's fewer parties, etc. But the size of the blocs and the support and the opposition to Netanyahu have basically stayed the same. And I think, Richard and I were discussing this the other day, that the key question really is, can Netanyahu get to 61? And if he can, then he could be in power for everyone's talking about the end of Netanyahu, but he could be in power for 2-3 more years. He's got challenges with investigations, but if he can get to 61, then he's fine. If he can't get to 61, then really all hell breaks loose. Whether that means that within Likud, a leader might try and push him out, or whether that means that Gantz will be able to try is an open question. But for me, that's really the key.
Yeah, let's just hone in on some of that. Thank you for that. It's a very good summary. So just hone in on some of that, and this is my question that I think we need to try and answer. Is you say, can he get to 61? So the thing that's stopping him, as we know, is what happened in April, is that Yisrael Beitenu, who is that of the parties that would normally be in coalition, Yisrael Beitenu under Avigdor Lieberman refused to join his coalition. So that meant he was short in April. And according to the polls now, he's short again. That's why he only gets to 56. So the allies that he already has, United Right, which is this new merger, a new old merger of the old kind of Jewish Home We now have Ayelet Shaked leading that party. In there is Naftali Bennett and the Old Jewish Home, which in the previous election was United Right. It's now called United Right, and it is predicted to win 12 seats. You have Shas, you have United Torah Judaism, each predicted to win 7 seats. Likud predicted to win 30. Now, my view is that potentially that is as far as it's going to go. Like, I can't see Likud breaking beyond 30 because the Yisrael Beitenu look like they're taking some of those votes. I can't see it. I think actually United Right predicted to win 12 seats. I might be proved wrong on this in September. I'd be interested to know what views are on this, Richard. I think that United Right looks generous at 12 seats in the polls. And if you look at the fact that the Jewish Home won, 4 seats in the last election, yes, there were a lot of wasted votes. But even if you look at all the wasted votes, I think 12, it looks exaggerated, and it may be less. I can't see them getting more. So I can't really see, unless there's a really low turnout election, the ultra-Orthodox get a few more seats, I can't see that block breaking to 60. But I'm really interested in your views, Richard.
Thanks, James. So first of all, I want to kind of challenge one of the premises and kind of make it even more complicated, that although 61 is the golden number, 61 is a deadlock government where every single member backbencher can hold the government around them on whatever be their pet issue. So 61 is really not sufficient. You need to get into at least the early mid-60s to have some form of stability and governability. What's interesting, if we look at Netanyahu's op-ed that he wrote this morning in Israel, as well as kind of ruling out to the unity government, it's again that same campaign from last night of saying to the Israeli right of centre public, listen guys, if you're serious about Netanyahu staying, then you don't have the luxury of voting for the United Right or to a Lieberman party, because that is just going to peel away and mean at the top of the list that in terms of Netanyahu's perspective, of course, God forbid blue and white were to outnumber him just by 2 or 3 seats, and then the mandate goes to the centre left, and it's the end of the right wing. So Likud is going to be running this campaign, a vicious campaign to really siphon off all those seats. So in that sense, I agree with you that the number 12 of the United Right does look inflated. We should also bear in mind, although they've gone through the machinations of changing name, there is essentially nothing new here than what was running for the last 4 years, except for that breakaway of April, which may be kind of the anomaly in this story. But what you have is Bennett and Shaked back with the National Union and the Jewish Home as they were beforehand. The one thing that is really new, and this is interesting, is the role of Ayelet Shaked herself. And it's not to be taken for granted that the national religious bloc running is being led by a secular woman. This is kind of transformational in the history of what used to be the National Religious Party and kind of that bloc of the religious Zionist camp. And that speaks a lot to Ayelet Shaked and her personal intellect and capacity to lead, that the rabbis, who kind of have been known for a tad of chauvinism here and there, and I'm putting it lightly, have allowed Shaked to lead this bloc. Yeah. The other kind of my last point on for the moment is on Lieberman himself. That I think as well, Lieberman is also probably punching above his weight in the polls as well, that they're also giving him double figures, where we know, apart from the anomaly of 2013 when he was incredibly successful, in the past kind of his numbers are more realistic of a core base of 5 or 6 seats. But the other thing about Lieberman, kind of beyond the headlines and beyond kind of what is fueling the Israeli media, is his capacity to change his mind and to redivert course. And so even though he is the one that was culpable and responsible for bringing us to a second election, because he wouldn't go to Netanyahu's demands in April, it's not inconceivable that he will have another change of mind, and depending on how he finishes up numbers wise, may go back and find himself back into a government with Netanyahu, especially if he's offered something as lucrative as kind of a deputy prime ministership, something that Netanyahu has never been willing to offer anyone in the past. He likes the idea that there is kind of the uncertainty over a number 2. But if he was to offer that to Lieberman, and along with the defence ministry and other perks of the party, it's not beyond the realm that Lieberman can cave and can decide that for the sake of a right-wing government that he's in.
Well, that's really interesting. But why didn't Netanyahu offer him that last time then? I mean, he was on the brink. I mean,
we don't know the full story. We don't know if he was offered that, and there's also a point that he had to prove. I mean, you can make the case that he had to prove at least one time that he wasn't bluffing, that he was serious, and that he had the capacity, as was proven, to actually take the government to another elections. Until then, it had never been tried before. It wasn't. We're into unprecedented territory of a government being unable to be formed, and that's thanks to that helps raise the price and raise the profile of Lieberman. The other pivot, which we've discussed before, is fascinating. That Lieberman, beyond kind of his bellicose rhetoric against the Arabs and against Hamas, that has been kind of a symbol of his previous campaigns, he has now pivoted to the domestic agenda and talking very hard about issues of church and state and separation and the ultra orthodox. So and it remains to be seen whether this will have the traction with the voters in the end, or as we've seen many times in the past, that voters in the end do vote back on the core issues.
If I could just add to that, it's not just that towards the end people move back to the national security issues. I think it's, if the elections will be close, that in some ways automatically means that there will be a big push both by Likud and Blue and White to, in inverted commas, come home, as in, you can't afford to vote for the Liebermans or the New Rights or the Democrat. You need to make sure that we are the largest party, because the largest party, the argument will get first pick of forming the government. So I think, the polls are as they are now, but it's August, it's summertime, nothing's really going to start moving until September. And I think what will then happen will be that the votes will move from the more niche parties to the larger parties.
Let's just have a little look at what's going on the centre left. And I think, we've had this situation where the Labour Party under Amir Peretz, who's a kind of blast from the past leader back in the early 2000s, joining up with Orly Levy, and they are predicted to win 6 seats. Democratic Union, Stav Shafir, Ehud Barak, Nitzan Horowitz from Meretz, joining to create the Democratic Union. Is there any scope for those parties to pull any votes in from the right, or are they just doing what the cynics say is just kind of swapping votes between them? You can see on the polls that it looks like Democratic Union has just kind of taken some votes from Blue and White, who are down to 28 from 35. Is there any movement there? Is there any validity in this argument that the kind of Sephardi power couple, Orly Levy and Amir Peretz, can somehow break into a sort of Sephardi traditional Likud voting areas, that Amir Peretz, who was previously mayor of Sderot, can do something to win over previously heavily Likud voting communities near Gaza? Is any of that have any truth to it? Do either of you think?
Well, the short answer is I'm very sceptical that is the case. I mean, as you laid out, the argument for the case would be that both of them have Sephardi roots. Both of them come from the periphery, Sderot in the case of Peretz, and Bet Shan and the Jordan Valley in the case of the Orly Levy, and her family have legendary roots in that city within the Likud, and that's the idea, that they can appeal to the poorest socioeconomic stratas that are Likud voters, but ironically, perhaps they would argue vote against their interests because it's the Labour Party that has more kind of appropriate social policy that can improve their lives. That's the case, and that's the logic of the unity of the pair of them running together. However, as I said, I'm deeply cynical that they can really make those inroads. They would have to mount an incredible campaign, which we as yet have not seen kind of bearing any fruit. And so it more looks that we have two parties on the left that have a niche that are probably safe beyond the electoral threshold, but are not going to get anywhere close to double figures, and will just kind of be part of the traditional left of centre camp. Of course, Amir Peretz has faced a lot of internal criticism. We've explained his logic of why he wanted to bring in Orly Levy Abukhsis, but in doing that, he's again alienated other members of his pack and the centre left tribe, and as a result of that, we've discussed before this incredible combination of Barak and Stav leaving her political home to join Nitzan Horowitz in Meretz. It's very interesting to see kind of the lines between those two of where they will pick up the voters. And again, this is not a natural alliance either. Meretz kind of in the past has kind of held themselves as ideologically pure, defending the kind of being the party of civil rights and being the most articulate and kind of presenting a position of left wing of reconciliation with the Palestinians, and Barak for all the baggage that he brings with him, both as prime minister and kind of in his personal politics and private life as well, as being very much a kind of one of the lead capitalists, and since leaving the political arena and going into business himself, sometimes with less salubrious partners. It seems a strange bedfellows for Stav, who kind of has campaigned on transparency and honesty and kind of a priority on public services, etc.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Just looking briefly at the two major parties before we finish. I mean, I suppose, we mentioned a bit about the Likud campaign, and we can reflect on that in a bit of detail. That they're doing similar things that they did in April. Form a strong right-wing government. A vote for anyone else could jeopardise that. So kind of pull more votes in from the smaller parties. Interesting that they had this poster campaign about Bibi's stature as someone who can meet world leaders, with lots of pictures of him with Trump and Putin and etc. Perhaps more of a positive campaign. What about blue and white before we get on to Likud? I mean, they look a little bit all over the place. Yair Lapid making his own videos. Then yesterday, sort of talking very tough on Gaza, that with another campaign in Gaza, they would start killing Hamas leaders in targeted assassinations. I mean, do we think their campaign has any coherence this time? Is it any better? I mean, they have an advantage this time that because they won 35 seats, they get a share of kind of quite a big pot of state funds, which is a real boost to their campaign. I mean, last time, let's not forget that they were a kind of big group, but they only represented the small number of seats that were for Yesh Atid. So they didn't have that big chunk of state funding. So this time around, they got a lot of state funding. They got a lot of advisors. They can spend a lot of money because of those 35 seats. Is that having an impact on the campaign? Does it look better? Is it having more impact?
So there's a political cartoon that I always remember, which is the four leaders of blue and white. So Gantz and Lapid and Ya'alon and Ashkenazi, and Lapid says, we will embitter their lives, which is something that he said about and Gantz says, yes, but not today.
Yes.
And the kind of feeling is that Gantz doesn't have the high energy type campaign type of thing. And I think there's probably a certain amount of truth to that. I think the alternative argument is that, Bibi campaigns in a particular way. It's quite aggressive. Some people would say it's very divisive. Barak campaigns in a similar way. And I think Gantz's strategy is to try and take the more statesman-like path. Now the big question will be, does that work? Does that work in Israel? Is that what people are looking for? But the other thing I'd say is that actually blue and white have been going out on the campaign trail, which the other leaders haven't. They've got a bus. It's going to different cities. They're meeting with people. Now, this is a party that after 6 weeks, more than 1 million people voted for them. So it will be a huge achievement to maintain that. I think there's two arguments. One argument is they don't have the energy that the others have. I think Lapid does, and I think that's part of Lapid's frustration with the others. But the other argument is, listen, it's August. People are away. There's going to be, we like the phrase kind of September sprint. And what they're doing now is, not saying all of these outrageous divisive things. They're going out, they're shaking hands, they're meeting people, they're telling them about what blue and white's about. And, it's easy to say, we'll see how successful that was, but it's a very different type of campaign so far. Only time will tell how successful that's been.
Yeah. And any changes on the Bibi campaign? I mean, there's some people have been saying that there's something different will have to happen with the Bibi campaign, because he's not just doing a straight left-right campaign, that he's now being attacked from a number of flanks. He's got Lieberman attacking him on his alliance with the ultra-Orthodox. He's got blue and white attacking him on a number of issues, including corruption. We've got Barak, who's kind of winding him up about anything that takes his fancy on a day-by-day basis. Does that change the way Likud campaign, or are they just carrying on regardless? What do we think?
I think this Netanyahu is the most experienced campaigner on the political circuit. It will be a balance of kind of attacking, and especially the left. And if you notice in everything that the party puts out, they will always emphasise the leadership of Yair Lapid of Blue and White alongside Benny Gantz, because they think, according to their polling and research, that is a real weak point of the Blue and White ticket. That in their view, that the people don't want Yair Lapid as capable of running the country and holding the top job. So they'll continue to attack and snipe. And as we've already discussed, kind of the what's referred to here as the Gewalt, kind of the woe betide, woe is me campaign that threatens the right-wing targets, and this works on both the United Right and on Lieberman as well, that says, guys, we're going to lose the kingdom if you don't get together and kind of back a strong Likud. So I think they're wily. They know it's Netanyahu's kind of in his element when it's part of this campaigning, and the challenge is the others to really land something that sticks. There's been the Blue and White launch campaign, as you correctly mentioned, with all their flow of cash because of their success in April, have been running a huge billboard campaign all over Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. I've seen it in the last few days of Netanyahu is only interested in Netanyahu, and that's kind of sparked a whole response that obviously Gantz says putting Israel first, and so the framing is Netanyahu only puts Netanyahu first. The Labour Party are coming up with kind of putting the human beings first, and so there is this kind of sloganism war. But I agree with Calev, of course, that this is only the pre-game up until the real pressure starts, and the real campaigning will only start in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the case that where we are is still in a little bit of a phony campaign, and that things will only really pick up as we get into sort of late August, and that's still 3 weeks to go to an election, which in a situation like the UK, where that's normally almost our entire campaign. So that's kind of normal compared to some other countries. Gentlemen, I think we will leave it there. Thank you very much. We've covered an awful lot of ground. We've gone all the way around the Knesset, as it were, looking at all the potential parties, and some really good thoughts there. No doubt we will turn to this regularly and see how all the parties are doing. I just say a final thank you to Calev for all your contributions on this podcast, and hopefully you will come in as a guest in the weeks and months ahead. We look forward to having you on again. And just to our listeners, for those of you who have already rated us, thank you for that. If you haven't already do that, then please do, and please leave a review. Let us know what you are thinking and what we should be doing in the future. Thank you for listening once again to Biocoms Podcast.